about this, and I'll call Aubrey Lane, and I'll give the mic to you.
Hi, well, good evening, and thank you for all coming out this evening. My name is Aubrey Lane, and I am the Commonwealth Transportation Board member from Hampton Roads, and I also serve on the 460 Funding Corporation that Charlie mentioned. Now, Charlie's been through a lot of the reasons for the road, and I think they've all been documented. Safety being one very critical to me, from not only the safety here in the area, but also in terms of safety from an evacuation, so having an evacuation route that doesn't flood if we had to evacuate our area. But I want to talk to you just a few minutes or a couple of seconds about tolls and why we're using tolls in Hampton Roads and across the state. The Commonwealth Transportation Board, our job is to allocate monies that have been given to us for transportation. Our General Assembly appropriates money. Our job is to allocate it to put on projects. And we all know that, just like many states, we have scarce funds, and we're using tolls to supplant some of the cost of those roads. And from my perspective, the roads, many of them are needed, obviously, and the cost of doing nothing is more expensive than not doing them. So I understand the use of tolls. In Hampton Roads, we have three major projects that are going on with tolls. One is the downtown Midtown Tunnel project, one is Dominion Boulevard, and now 460. 460 seems to me to be the one most appropriate, and I'll tell you why. On the other two, those people that use the road really don't have a choice. They have to go over that road, and those tolls they've got to pay. Here with 460, the current road's going to stay in place, and so if you do not want to pay the toll, you don't have to. You can continue living and doing the things that you've always done, and if you want to have the express route, you're able to do so and pay the toll. So I think this is a great example of how to leverage our dollars, our scarce dollars, but our citizens are most benefited from using this, because if you want to enjoy the benefits, you're able to do so. Truckers, whether it's a business decision or a personal decision, you don't have to hit the brakes for a whole 55 miles. It costs you $3.69. Makes sense. But if you choose not to, then you don't have to. So I just thought I'd throw that out and look forward to your questions. So thank you.
And we have another CTB member here, Roger Cole, if you'd like to share a few words.
Thank you very much. And again, I extend my thanks to you all for being here. I'm Roger Cole. Sure. I represent the Richmond District on the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Just share a couple of macro thoughts. Aubrey Lane had suggested a couple of board meetings ago that the 460 project was different than most projects that we deal with as we go through our duties. And he was absolutely right. I mean, so many of the projects we deal with are prescriptive cures for congestion crises that have built up over, years or decades. This, on the other hand, is about future opportunities. And as is the case with any investment opportunity, it comes with risks and rewards. It's a big project, and there are certainly risks involved. I think VDOT has done an extremely good job of identifying and analyzing the risks. I mean, the things such as, what if the Virginia ports don't experience the market share growth that they hope to by the Panama Canal widening? What if folks choose not to use a toll road and use the old 460? Those concerns and risks have been vetted awfully well. On the other hand, there are some significant rewards. Both Aubrey and Charlie talked about those: a $7.3 billion economic impact, 14,000 new jobs. Some of the non-financial items are the safety and the hurricane evacuation. I don't think the military logistics connection has been mentioned yet, but that's pretty significant as well. So there are a lot of benefits. I just want to spend a brief moment focusing on the Richmond region. I'm a little parochial in that nature. And just share a little bit about the benefits that I see. The Richmond district is blessed because it has significant natural logistical advantages. We have 4 interstates in the Richmond district. We have 2 Class 1 rail lines. We have water passage from the port with barge service. We have over 100 trucking companies that are domiciled in the Richmond district. And we also have the Fort Lee Center for Logistics Education, which is significant. And as a result of all of those logistics advantages over the years, we've been able to, and I think one of the slides did a good job of pointing out the corporate partners and citizens that have moved to the area, particularly in the distribution and logistics end of the business. And Owens & Minor, Amazon, recently the Vitamin Shop, and a number of other economic drivers and employment drivers. What I see the Route 460 connector doing is bringing another piece of that logistics puzzle to a part of our Richmond district that hasn't necessarily been favored by it in the past. That's the Tri-Cities area. That's a connection to an area that absolutely needs this kind of growth. And hopefully it's a future connection to I-85, which gives us a new commercial corridor going down into North Carolina and South Carolina and areas like Charlotte and Spartanburg and whatnot. So in the end, I think the rewards far outweigh the risks of the project, and I think VDOT has done a great job of analyzing both. So thanks.
I also want to introduce Mr. Shep Miller. He is an urban at large member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board, and he's trying to take the mic from me.
What's urban at large mean? It means I'm from Norfolk. Thank you all for allowing us to come here and speak to you tonight. I got a little bit, I'm going to echo a couple things and give you a little bit different take on something that's important to me. As Aubrey and Roger both said, we've sort of grappled with this project like most of them. We have a very difficult situation in the state of Virginia as it relates to transportation. If you read the newspaper, you know that we're out of construction money in 5 years. Literally, we have zero money in 5 years to build anything. And unfortunately, that's the boat that the board finds itself in. So we've been struggling with ways to try to find ways that we can build what needs to be built in the Commonwealth. And the reality is the responsibility lies with all of us in this room and the legislature, because for many years they've underfunded transportation. It's put us in a position where we're behind. Most of y'all, thankfully, I think from your perspective, live here and not in the city of Norfolk or Virginia Beach or Chesapeake or Richmond. It took me about a half an hour extra to get out of town today at 10 minutes of 4 because it's such a mess in the city of Norfolk and the city of Virginia Beach just to get out. And we've just, as Aubrey indicated, we've just, as VDOT and the state, we've put a new tunnel project there that will be helpful. But there are people that live there, and that's the only way they get to go to work. Some of these people making $25,000, $30,000 a year, it's going to cost them $1,000 out of their pocket after tax just to keep going to the same job they've been going to. That's a tough situation, and we don't like that. So my political message to you, and I'll say one other thing about why I like this project. My political message to you is, you know, everything's either pay me now or pay me later. If we don't build the roads now, we don't get the jobs, we've got all sorts of congestion problems. The Navy has been very clear to us, in the military and Hampton Roads, which drives a lot of jobs. They say, we're not bringing any more assets here till you fix the problem. And we literally have no more money. We don't have money to match, to do the federal match. A lot of projects, the feds will give us 80% or whatever it is. We don't have the 20% match in 5 years. If somebody's going to give you 80 cents on a dollar and you can't even raise the 20 cents, that's a pretty bad situation. That's the situation we're in. I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't like a lot of taxes. I like to be very careful with my money. But the bottom line is if we don't have the roads to help us grow the economy, that's a worse situation than taxing ourselves a little bit to do what we need to do. And I'm not a big fan about tolls. I don't think it's the best way. I think the entire state ought to be paying for all projects because at the end of the day, everybody benefits. The folks out in Wise County benefit from this port. It drives a tremendous amount of revenue to the rest of the state, and I think they should pay just like we pay. We shouldn't have to just pay for our roads and the state pays for theirs. So in this case, it's a unique project in that there is an alternative. A lot of our toll projects is really not an alternative, and the Midtown Downtown was one of those. But there is an alternative. And the last thing I'll let you sort of chew on, and I struggle with this project because I'm not a fan of tolls generally and so forth, but we're convinced that the economic return, forget the road itself, but we all know what happens when we build roads. We know things sprout up around them. We know that we've lost many opportunities from a port, which Roger sort of alluded to, where people have gone to Savannah or gone south because there was land to build distribution facilities and build businesses. There is great economic opportunity through the whole 460 corridor that can be tapped, we believe, in the next 15 or 20 years by virtue of having this throughway. It's also critically important to us in the metropolitan area to be able to get out of our cul-de-sac. I mean, it's literally hours, sometimes delayed, just to get out. And this will give us another opportunity, albeit one we'll pay for with tolls, but to be able to get to Richmond and get to 95 or 85. So I would tell you I was sort of a reluctant or latecomer to endorsing the project. I do think it's absolutely the right thing to do. I will tell you that and I'll shut up, Charlie. I think you did a great job, by the way. I've been somebody whose land's been taken by eminent domain for road construction, and I wasn't exactly real happy about it, but it was the right thing to do for the Commonwealth. It was the right thing to do for my fellow citizens, and that's just part of the price that we pay for living in such a great place that we do. Some of us have to give up a little bit more, and hopefully now under the new laws that we have, people will be properly compensated for whatever they're giving up, and it will help this area tremendously, both from a safety standpoint and from an economic development standpoint. And for me, it's all about let's get some more jobs, some good paying jobs around here and everywhere else so that we can pay our taxes and pay our bills and enjoy our lives. So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm sorry I came in a couple minutes late, but I was in traffic for about 45 extra minutes. Thanks for letting me to speak to you.
And we have one more speaker, Rodney Oliver with the Virginia Port Authority.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Wow, big crowd. I'm not going to repeat everything that Charlie and Roger and the others have talked about. From a Virginia Port Authority perspective, there are really two primary benefits that we see. The first one is the economic development piece that you've heard. We already have customers on the north end and south end of the 460 corridor, and some scattered in between, but there's lots of economic development opportunities throughout that corridor that the Virginia Port Authority and its customers and its partners see great benefits to. And then the second piece, which Charlie talked about really in his first slide, is velocity. We're a velocity-driven business. The more cargo we can, get out of the port, or in the case of exports, get out of Hampton Roads and off to Asia and Europe and other countries, the faster we can get that through, the better. The fact that this project would cut down the transit time 20 minutes each way. It could mean the difference in a trucker being able to make 2 turns a day to the Port of Virginia versus, or make 3 turns a day versus 2 turns a day, which is a significant advantage for the trucker and for that business. So, for that reason, the Virginia Port Authority has partnered with the Secretary of Transportation, VDOT, and the others to make this project happen. And I want to really thank VDOT and the Secretary of Transportation's office, because the first time that we really heard about this project and the projected tolls, they were 3 times what they are today. So while there are still tolls that are out there, and I know tolls are uncomfortable for many that are out there, it is tremendously less than what was being looked at originally. So I want to thank them for their efforts. That's all I really have to say. Thank you.
We'll open it up to questions. If you have any questions, raise your hand. I'll do my best to get to you. You might have to walk out over to the aisle or speak very loudly, one or the other, so that everyone can hear you, and then we'll do our best to answer it. So if you ask your question, but you got to speak loudly so we all can hear.
Yes, on the toll, would it be a electronic or weigh-in motion for trucks?
We have talked with DMV about the ability to incorporate a weigh-in motion facility. Today there's a weigh station on 58 near Bowers Hill as you're heading into Virginia Beach, and that's an old-style facility. DMV is very interested in looking at a weigh-in motion facility. There's been a lot of change. Any of you that are in the trucking business, this Gold Star label and some of those things. So while we have not reached an agreement with DMV, DMV is one of the agencies under the Secretary of Transportation. So as we develop the project, we'll absolutely be looking at incorporating the newest technology because, again, it goes to the attractiveness of this facility. The I-64 scales is also an old-style scale facility. But again, the technology exists today to make it weigh in motion.
And what about the speed limit for trucks?
I think, Mortez, the speed limit, cars and trucks, is 65, 70. 70 miles an hour, cars and trucks.
We have a question here from Rosa Turner.
Good evening. Just wanted to know, I'm a DBE and engineering company and SWAM.
Excellent.
But I wanted to know if you all are doing the contract signing in December 2012. To me, that lets me know that your SWAM and DBE representatives should already be identified because that prime should have to list that with their contract. How are you going to guarantee that other SWAM and DBE businesses within this, 100-mile radius, I don't know what you all are doing, are going to have an opportunity to participate in this project?
VDOT Civil Rights Division is also involved in all the discussions that we have with the contractor. As Charlie mentioned, not everything is going to start right away. There will be some activities that are going to start in January and February, but most of the activities, construction-related activities, are going to start later. We are going to have more meetings. We are going to work directly with 460 Mobility Partners. As a matter of fact, they are invited to this meeting. They have a table in a room which is right next to us. You can start conversations with them. There is contact information for them already on project website. You can initiate talks with them. You can send your information to them. And as I said, there will be more and more meetings that we're trying to send information to everybody who's interested to work with them as a DBE or SWAM and make sure that everybody's included.
And I think as a follow-up, they have not identified all of their contractors and their subs and subs of subs at all. Again, we're talking about approximately a third of a over $1 billion job. So, and that's a bit of a difference from that design bid build world where that is established at the time of signing of the contract. They are still establishing those relationships, so there will be tremendous opportunities. And I'm glad to see you here tonight, and please talk with the folks before you leave.
We have a question from James Gay. Please stand.
Thank you much. Mr. Kilpatrick, you probably alluded to the first part of my question. My concerns are that the markings that have been put down on the highways, by the way, I live on 8220 Beaver Down Road, which is in Waverly, Virginia, and the markings that have been put down on the roads already and the stakes and everything, I know you said the white patch and everything for aerial view, but right on my property, they have a stake driven right at the edge of my driveway. If construction were to start tomorrow and I decide to go home, I couldn't even get in my driveway. So the concerns that I have is this. There's 4 houses in my line. Okay. All of those houses are been slated to be bought by VDOT. 10 foot of my property is going to be taken. I have a 500-gallon propane tank, which will be included. I have a 3-car detached garage that if the project came through, I wouldn't be able to get the 2 cars in my garage. The other thing is I enter my house from the side, which is my driveway. If I were to walk out my driveway the next day, I'd be walking into the highway with the tractor trailer trucks. So, and I don't say that to be comical, I mean, it's realistic, according to what's already there. Not to say that it's etched in stone, but that is my concern. The other thing of it is, I read in I want to say the Richmond Times this past that after you said that if the government loan is approved, that the Port Authority and VDOT fees might come down a little bit. And I don't know if it's the Tiffany loan or not that it was talking about, but I understand the state of Virginia is maxed out so far as borrowing. So I just like somebody to shed some light on that, please.
Yeah, a couple things. You talked about the impact to your property, and I think the question you asked, although specific to you, many in the room may have similar questions about if you've not lived along a roadway that was improved, you haven't been through that process. There's a number of things that go on that if we impact your property, whether it's an easement or a permanent right-of-way acquisition, you have to be compensated. And at some point, it gets where the value of the damage, is what it's called, exceeds the value of the property. We may purchase the entire property. There are even provisions that we have where we buy the property and the person buys back their own house and physically moves it with a house mover. So every circumstance is a bit different, but at the end of the project, you still have to have access. If the state of Virginia or any other government entity takes away your access, you have to be compensated for it. So that's an example. You talked about your driveway. We either have to build you a new driveway that works, or if we can't build, if you can't get to your property, we have taken that property. We have essentially taken that property and rendered it inaccessible. So then you have to be fully compensated. Sometimes you'll find it may just be that if we take a drain field or a well, depending on your property, you may be in a condition where your drain field is grandfathered and there's no public sewer around. There's no way to connect to public sewer. There's no way to replace that drain field. We may have to purchase that entire property because we've rendered the property unusable or uninhabitable, even though we don't take the house. Now, there's as each of those circumstances is very different. We can't leave you in a position where you can't live on the property that's left. So that's a very important part of the right-of-way acquisition process. The other piece that's important, we established a 500-foot wide corridor that we went through this environmental document in this process. The road is not going to be 500 feet wide. You're talking about the right-of-way is 230 feet, and the physical construction is probably in the order of about 120 to 150 feet from outside edge of pavement to edge of pavement. But back to your point again, I think that as we get into those design details, and tonight the drawings that are in the other room are concept level drawings that were prepared by the concessionaire, by 460 Mobility Partners, as a concept that they are working on. Now, your particular, what's the route number that you live on? You gave me the name, but what's 606? Okay. So you can see on the maps tonight, where their initial run at where the road might be would occur. But I think that, again, we get down to the details of meeting with individuals. You have to, at the end of it, you've got to be fairly compensated, and if you can no longer use your property, that's considered a taking, and which means you have to be fully compensated for the value of the property. Now, you had another question about the TIFIA loan. The TIFIA loan, and you talked about maxing out the lending capacity or the borrowing capacity in Virginia. Virginia is a very conservative state in terms of borrowing money, and I will tell you that from the governor, from the General Assembly, they guard that vigorously. Because what it does is we have an extremely high bond rating. What that means is we get very, very low interest. These bonds may sell for 3.5%, 4%, less than 5% these bonds will sell for. So we're not paying a lot of interest. But as far as the debt capacity of the Commonwealth and how the debt is paid, the debt on this project, which again is a small piece of the total project, because the only debt will be the $216 million and any loan that we were able to receive from TIFIA. That will be paid out of toll revenue. In order to sell these bonds, these people that buy these bonds are very, very cautious about buying this kind of debt. So we have to do what's called a traffic and revenue study. And what that is, it's a study that establishes what we believe the revenue generated from the road will be. And then the rating agencies, they will typically come in and they will cut that amount even further. If we say we're going to generate $10 million a year, they may say, well, we think that's fine, but we're only going to give you credit for $7 million. And it's not unusual to have a reduction of 25, 30%. So they build in these things to protect themselves as the bondholders in the sale of these bonds. So again, the bond sale is a very small piece of the total package here. It is paid back by the revenue from the road, and there are a series of, I'll call it backstops, that are in place that will protect the bondholders. Because again, this is a very cautious group of people. They're not getting a large return. So people that are getting 3-4% return are very cautious that you're not cutting into that margin. And for that reason, there's a lot of safety measures that make the potential for not paying back the bonds extremely small. Extremely small.
Charlie, we have another question from a gentleman in the middle of the row here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Willie Noyes from Petersburg, and I was at the City Council meeting last night. And they asked a few questions, and the gentleman gave a presentation. But during that session of the agenda, the public wasn't allowed to speak. And I have several questions, and I'll just ask two.
Okay.
Get in the back of the line and raise my hand again. Okay, now, speaking on the toll, I found that there is a problem when you might fall short of money or something, and it becomes a reason why you have to ask again or increase the price. And my problem with that is the increment. You know, but if it says it's $2 and you jump up to 10, hey, wait a minute now, let's come up gradually and the frequency. So speaking of the toll on the amount on the toll road, I would like to hear somebody say in case of something that might happen and you have to increase the increment that you would be allowed.
Okay, that's a great question. And I think that as far as the toll growing over time, and it will grow, built into the model, or I'm sorry, built into the contract and the sale of the debt, the toll will rise at 3.5% per year. So that's how much. That's the fixed amount. Now, if the toll revenue is greater, you're getting more money in than you need to pay off that, then the tolling can be, the increase can be slowed or suspended. But the corporation that sells the debt and that's responsible for toll collection cannot raise it above 3.5% a year unless they are unable to meet their debt obligations. But before those things occur, there's an interest reserve account. What that means is when some of the money that they borrow, they have to hold in escrow for rainy day, and that rainy day is strictly for paying off debt. In addition to that, there is what's called a line of credit through a loan through VTIB, Virginia Transportation Infrastructure Bank, and it's kind of like a line of credit that is available as another backstop if they are unable to meet the revenue in order to retire the debt. There is, I believe it's $80 million that is set aside. It's not expected to be used, but it's there as a insurance policy in case the toll revenue is not sufficient. If toll revenues continue to be above projections, I mentioned this in the presentation, the additional revenue comes back to the project to pay for the operations and ongoing maintenance, and it stays with Virginia. So that's how it works. You should expect that the toll will increase at 3.5% per year for the term, and the term is it's a total of 40 years. It's 5 years construction and 35 years of operation. And that's a very fundamental change. Some of you that have been to these meetings for a number of years, it was originally going to be a 99-year concession. It's going to be 100 years that the concessionaire was going to own and operate and collect revenue off the toll road. And there were some small provisions where we would share in the profit, but basically any extra money over 100 years would stay with the concessionaire, and that's not the case anymore.
So, my question is, this concept started, got 10 years for a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of crooks, everything else to get in the making, from the slippage of the people that were responsible. And, or is there anything in place that ramrod over this or do some tracking and see if everything was legitimate or not, or, 'cause
Yes.
if there's a way, a person gonna take it. So we have to block all those things to keep fairness and stuff.
Yeah, there's a number of safeguards that are built into our projects, but I'll talk about this specifically. We have a civil rights section that's part of VDOT, and their job is both advocacy and enforcement regarding civil rights. And what that civil rights takes on, it's about treating citizens fairly. It's about small contractors, treating them fairly. It's about ensuring that process fully complies with federal law. In addition to that, we're using federal money on this project, and the federal government also provides oversight through the Federal Highway Administration. They also have audit and investigators and folks that do that. Within VDOT, we also have another group, it's an antitrust group, that looks at and investigates claims of bid rigging and misconduct during the process of projects. But again, there's internal controls, but there's also the external controls. Federal government is looking over our shoulder to ensure that the state of Virginia, any state in the United States, is in compliance with the federal regulations. If you don't, well, there's in addition to all the penalties that incur, including there's misdemeanor and felonies that can occur for violation. They don't give you the money. I mean, that's the bulk of the state money here is federal money that comes to the Commonwealth. And if we don't follow their rules and follow that process, we won't be reimbursed. So that's some of the things to ensure the fairness in the process. You mentioned briefly the legislation. That legislation largely deals with other types of acquisitions that are done by community development authorities for renovating communities and some of that kind of work. It's that legislation and that amendment to the Constitution is not really geared towards the acquisition of right-of-way for public facilities. It's really more about acquisition of right-of-way for development opportunities. Again, renovating a town or acquiring land for a more of a private type business. So that's really what that was about. Yes, sir.
Hey, Charlie. Rex Hoffman, Alouette County Board of Supervisors. And great presentation, by the way. There's a lot of citizens here, I think, that are concerned about its direct impact on their particular property. cutting through their farm, going across their driveway, going through their front yard, their backyard, sometimes even their houses, and, just disrupting their life, obviously. I guess I'm asking, is there a phase, and I see your design public hearing, is there a phase where you'll interact with these citizens on directly? I mean, sometimes the road can be moved maybe 100 yards and have far less impact. Is at that stage, are we going to be able to negotiate with private citizens in some sense?
Yeah, and the short answer to that is yes. There is, and I talked earlier about the design-build process versus the design-bid-build process, where the design is hard and fast when we execute a contract with very little opportunity to make adjustments and changes. We and the design-build contractor, January 2nd, we're going to sign this thing this year. They will immediately initiate that preliminary work, be making contact. And you make a great point. I mentioned to you it's a 500-foot corridor. The road prism itself is around 150 feet or so. There are tremendous opportunities to, just as you said, some minor changes within that alignment can make a major positive impact to a particular property owner and may make them much more willing to work through and negotiate a final compensation. So the answer is yes, absolutely. That's one of the great parts of this design-build process. There'll be that opportunity to really get down to the property owner level. The challenge sometimes is, well, can you move it over here? Well, over here might be your neighbor. And so, that's a balance that you have to reach throughout that process in developing this project. But there's a lot of opportunity for flexibility here. Thank you.
Lou Carr has a question.
Thanks. My question, it started with an article recently in the Norfolk Virginian Pilot that indicated that as of that day, the Corps of Engineers has still not signed off on the proposed route for the new 460. So the first question is, have they signed off on your proposed route as of this moment?
Okay. When we established this corridor, we went through a process with the Federal Highway Administration and ultimately ended in what's called a record of decision. It's a federal action that the federal government says, and again, the Federal Highway Administration are the ones that say, we're issuing a record of decision, it's this corridor and this alignment. The Corps of Engineers has responsibility over protecting waters of the U.S. That's one of the many things the Corps of Engineers does. Yeah, wetlands and streams, but it's called waters of the U.S. And so that's one of their primary responsibilities. As we continue with the design of this project, there'll be a number of wetlands and streams. Every time we cross a body of water or a wetland, and sometimes, folks, a wetland you may not think it's a wetland, but it's classified that way due to certain soil and plant and so on conditions. So during that process, the contractor will have to obtain permits from the Corps of Engineers. So the Corps of Engineers has not issued any permits on this project, nor will they until the design is far enough along that they can evaluate the impact of those crossings, whether it's a bridge or a roadway or a utility or something like that. So again, they will not approve as far as issuance of the permit. That's the federal action that the Corps takes. Will not do that until those design plans are to a point where they say, yes, okay, we've seen you've either minimized or avoided or what they call mitigate, which is you're basically compensating for that wetland impact. So that will be done during the permitting process.
And if they decide that they're not going to approve some of these, then what option do you have?
Well, frankly, the thing that we do in working with the Corps, and we've built thousands of projects that have required Corps permits. The first thing in the project development is you try and avoid that wetland impact for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, it's the law. Second of all, if you impact that wetland, you have to basically offset it through compensation. And wetland credits are very expensive. I keep using the term wetland. but whether it's a creek or a wetland area, that we have to compensate by replacing it. We either replacing it by building a facility, or we restore a wetland, or we buy credits. And what that is, maybe some of you on your farms have wetland banks. It's done throughout Virginia, and you have to buy those credits. So that's what happens. But ideally, what you do is you try and make this alignment so it crosses the least number of streams and wetlands. It's simply good business. It's not just impacting the wetlands. It's expensive. Bridges are expensive. Fills across soft ground are expensive. It's expensive to go across. If the ground looks bad, it costs a lot of money to cross it. Whether it's so again, that's all part of this design process. Thank you.
Brian Cobb has a question.
Yes, sir. I have a concern about the roads that are going to be closed due to this corridor. We were speaking with a gentleman in the room next door, and he said that a lot of these closures were already figured out by VDOT. Now, is this going to be part of their design and build? Were these closures already established, and are they etched in stone? You know, there's going to be a lot of impact to a lot of properties along this corridor where these roads that used to, have good access back and forth are going to be stopped with a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
How is that going to be handled?
A number of the roads are being you either have interchanges or you have overpasses or underpasses, but there are a number also that are either cul-de-sac or make a hard left or a hard right down a frontage road that will then tie into another roadway. You asked if they're etched in stone. The answer to that is no. As far as these what's being bridged, what's being cul-de-sac, a lot of that was based on the best information we had. If a decision, if it was designed as a cul-de-sac or a frontage road or some other thing not to cross the new roadway, of course, crossing it, there's a cost to that. And some of those, it may well be there's certain roads that folks say, you don't need to carry that one across, but you need to carry this one across. All of that will be done as part of the final design process. So the answer is no, it is not etched in stone. What was done, though, is, again, at a planning level, establishing taking a good estimate of what we thought would work as far as continuing to provide access to properties and connectivity and those things. But there's going to be, again, a lot of that as we go forward in the final design.
If we wait to the next meeting that you're talking about after some design and build is done, isn't that going to be kind of late to get an input on it?
Oh, there'll be plenty of meetings before. When I said the public hearing, that's not the next meeting. You're going to get tired of coming to meetings. We're going to, because we really, this is part of this process. There'll be small meetings and large meetings, individual meetings and meetings with groups about these levels of detail. So please don't think the next time you see me might be that meeting, but you're going to see a lot of folks between now and then. So that the design, it's not like they'll go away for 6 months or 9 months, create a design in a dark room, and then come out and say, what do you think? It won't be done that way at all. It'll be a continuous iterative process. And you will find a lot of that goes on because that's a good point. A lot of what we talk about, we're talking about big stuff here, but we're also talking about little stuff. And some people, they want to talk about their little stuff, and they don't want to talk about your little stuff. So absolutely, there will be smaller meetings, smaller community meetings also.
David Dixon.
Yes, I have two questions and one observation. One is that you refer to wetlands and sort of define them, but an important point about wetlands is they serve important environmental and conservation objectives. For those who hunt, they provide a lot of wildlife habitat. They also are important in protecting water quality in the streams around here and into the drainages and into Tar Pimlico Sound. Second question I have is, and I'm sorry I was late, I was stuck behind some wonderful VDOT maintenance that was going on Route 460. So I haven't been in the other room yet, but I believe there's a figure of over 14,000 jobs created as a benefit of this project within the Route 460 corridor. How is that corridor defined for the purposes of that estimate?
Well, I think that we've done several independent studies. I say we. Several independent studies have been done that talk about job creation as it results to projects like this. And again, I don't know if those reports are there tonight or not. We frankly believe that 14,000, that's not construction jobs. That's long-term jobs that are created as part of the development of the corridor. We frankly think that's a pretty conservative number. We've purposely been conservative in the revenue estimates, in the projection of what the jobs will be on this project. We have not tried to oversell this project. So again, this is we're comfortable with that number. And Chamorro and some others have done independent studies, economic studies of the benefits of projects. You can also simply look to things like ARTBA and other organizations have done. How much does a road impact as far as providing job opportunities?
Can you speak to what was reported in the paper about the redesign of the New Bohemia on-off issue? Is it actually going to be moved? Is it going to be the way that it comes off at 295? What, if you can elaborate on any type of
Sure.
issues?
I talked a little bit about the 500-foot corridor and the environmental study that established this corridor. And as part of that, it included the area they call New Bohemia, which is right there at 295 and 460. Prince George County has been very clear, the Board of Supervisors, County Administrator, and others, about their concern about that tie-in. As part of the final, as we move from a concept to a design, we'll have to look at that as well as a number of other features along that corridor. Is there a better connection that still provides better traffic flow, better connectivity to the interstate, and does not have that negative impact of additional environmental, whether it's historic or natural resources or wetlands. So that's a good example of an area where we are keenly aware of the concerns of Prince George County, and that's an area that the designers, our environmental staff, community will focus on. Okay, is there something else that we can do and still meet all of the requirements? In a road like this, in a facility like this, there are tremendous opportunities for flexibility in the design, and I'm confident that that location, as well as several others, that we'll be able to come up with a concept that meets the federal requirements. But when I say federal, I mean both highway and environmental requirements, but provides for better connectivity and less impact.
Adam Klemick.
Hello. I have two quick questions. The first is, if this turns into less than desirable like Pocahontas Parkway has in revenue, who's eating the losses on this? Is it taxpayers? And the second one is, you've done studies on jobs created. How about all the ones that are lost due to rerouting traffic on this corridor?
Well, you've asked two questions. One is about, so what if the toll revenue doesn't work? What if it doesn't generate enough revenue? I've talked a little bit about the safety measures and the backstops, but ultimately the people that buy those bonds, just as you would buy bonds, many of you may own municipal bonds. You may not even know you own them through a 401 plan or something like that. But if you buy bonds, there is always some risk that the debt will not be repaid. These are investment-grade bonds. And so what that means is they're of a higher quality than many other types of bonds. But ultimately, it's the bond holder that would be, if all these backstops fail, it's the bond holders that would lose their investment. We think we've created a scenario that makes it so unlikely that it's not one that this is a very low debt on this project compared with the value of the project. It's very much different than the Pocahontas project. where there was considerably more debt. In this case, the equity is the public money that's being put into that project. Again, when you saw the slides, most of the money is not debt. So you also asked about the impact on individuals from the project, that will building this project take all the traffic off of 460? We don't think so. We really don't think that it will. Over time, there will be changes in traffic patterns. There will be new businesses open. Other businesses will close. In some cases, there are examples throughout Virginia where that parallel facility to the interstate either for some period of time maybe lagged behind and then came back. Other cases, the businesses still reside along the old primary road. I mean, I use the example of Route 60 and 64. If you want McDonald's, you got to go all the way over to Route 60 in many cases as you drive between Richmond and Williamsburg. So will there be changes over time? Yes, there will be changes in over time. But the other thing that is likely to happen, I showed all the distribution facilities. I mean, some of those are enormous, but some of those are not. Businesses that do this logistics and distribution kind of work, manufacturing, they want to have good access. We've got great rail access on this corridor with the Norfolk Southern line, and we also have this great roadway. So it's going to draw people and these businesses to this corridor, which are then going to utilize the businesses, whether you own a hardware store or a McDonald's or a gas station or a grocery store. And so in balance, we believe that, and continue to believe, that this will be a positive impact for this region. It's very hard to say down to that micro level, that individual store, that individual business. I couldn't predict that.
Gordon Burrell. Stand up, please.
Yeah. How do y'all determine the value of someone's property?
That's a good question. The way we determine the value of property is that we have licensed appraisers, and those appraisers, just as they appraise any property, they go out and appraise your land. The individual is also there as part of that process. The appraiser has to invite you to come with them, when they appraise your property, and you have to be given a copy of the appraisal so you can see what the appraisal is. If we cannot negotiate a price, if we don't agree on the appraisal, as an example, you say it's worth $10, I say it's worth $1, and we don't agree, the money, if we acquire the property through condemnation, we deposit that money in escrow, and you have access to that money immediately. But also, you still have the right to go to court through a condemnation hearing. It's a little different than a regular court hearing, but a condemnation hearing, there's typically 3 commissioners, and you can make your case for why you believe you're due greater compensation. But again, the value, the appraised value is yours as soon as we file that certificate. But that doesn't mean if you take the money that you can't still go to court, because you can. That's part of the protection that's given in the acquisition process. So again, it's an appraisal process. The appraisers have to be licensed and certified, and they have to provide you copies of that appraisal.
Will your appraisal be connected with the appraisal already set?
No. It's they will use that information, but it's a different. It's not simply a tax assessment. It's not simply a tax assessment. It's an appraisal of the fair market value of the property. Yes.
Joseph Wagner.
Yes, sir. I'm from that New Bohemia you spoke of earlier, that area, and we're really concerned about what they're going to do up there. I've been talking to some of your people, and if you ever look at the map of it, I lived there all my life, and I had to study that thing for about an hour to figure out how those roads are going. I understand that thing was designed back in the 90s, or maybe 2000 something. And I understand that it's not going to go that way. They're going to redo it. Is there any information, anybody, about how they're going to, that's the northern terminus of this project.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people are concerned about what they're going to do there. We've got some property there, and we can't rent it or anything because people don't know when the road's coming through. I'm hearing it's, in your thing, it said it was going to start acquisition in late 2013.
Yes.
So,
But before that, and I think, again, the example of New Bohemia is an area where there's a lot of interest and a lot of thought that there may be a better way. And what I mean by that is a better way to connect 295, connect two high-speed facilities together to possibly reduce the impact to the community itself, to be able to retain some of the access that exists in the community today. So that's going to be one of the first areas that the contractor and the designers look at and work, and the commitment that we have made throughout the process is, especially through the Prince George County Board of Supervisors, who have represented you all well there in saying, look, we've got to come up with something different here. That's going to be one of the first areas that we look at as to how do we how do we design and ultimately build a facility that really makes sense there. And I think there's been a lot of concern over time that this design doesn't give all the features that maybe it could and should. Well, and that is to be able to ultimately find improve connectivity between 85 and 95 and 460. That is part of the ongoing plans. There have been a number of studies on the 85-95 interchange itself, but the notion of ultimately being able to come straight across, finding at some point the ability to provide that project. The project that we're building today is, I don't want to say it's independent, because every time you create a link, there's the ability to do other things. But not yet, but after the 1st of January, they will be. Well, the bids are in, but we haven't signed the deal. So once we sign the deal, then they'll be turned loose to begin work on that. We still have to comply with our environmental permitting. We still have to comply with our environmental document. But that is all part of, on a project of this scale, that's sort of normal business. That's sort of normal business to be doing that as we go through this through the design process.
Does this project have anything to do with the project of Panama Canal?
The answer to that is yes. In terms of the expansion of the Panama Canal, and if you don't know what that does, they're making it deeper and wider. It will take what they call Panamax freighters. These are the largest freighters in the world. We are one of the very few ports on the East Coast that can accept this larger vessel. So it puts us in a great position in Virginia to be able to bring additional port traffic.
Doug Chesson?
Yes, good afternoon. I want to thank you all for the public meeting and thank you all for the interchanges. Development with along 460 corridor, I believe, is very important to the localities. My question is, I recognize that there's a plan, and specifically in Sussex County, there are 3 interchanges. Specifically, there's one 620 where the public, I guess the county itself, was a proponent of a 628, and 620 is the actual planned interchange. What would it take, I guess, knowing that before we sign a contract, once you sign a contract and make changes to a contract, it's going to be more expensive to the Commonwealth. What would it take to have this change prior to signing the contract?
Well, I think that The interchange locations were based on, again, the original environmental study. I got down here a little bit early, and I was aware of this question that had come up about these 620 and 628. So I actually went down and rode both roads this afternoon. And I can see from the community's perspective that 628 is a much better road. I mean, it's much wider, better alignment. I don't know what other businesses are on that road. But what will happen is that will be part of that process, is to look at, again, I keep stressing, it still must comply with the environmental document and the environmental regulations, but can we not build this one and build this one instead? Those are kinds of details that will absolutely be part of this as we begin the design process. Because, again, I made the comment about if you move something, it's going to impact someone else. So that's all part of that evaluation process. Some may want an interchange move, some may not. Again, depending on how it affects them personally. But I think that's another good example of a place that we'll look very carefully at. If you're not familiar with that area, the roads are less than half a mile apart, and they're both secondary roads that extend south from Wakefield. And so there may be an opportunity for one or the other.
Charlie, we have a question here.
Yes, sir. Eric Fly, Sussex County Board of Supervisors. And of course, we have a lot of concerns on this project you have. I also have concerns that now that I've been at 4 hearings, they tend to change a little bit. We went from 15 minutes to 20 minutes, and there's some other changes. But I got a couple of questions that I think that we need answers to. One, the governor has proposed tolls on I-95 south of the 460 bypass. So does VDOT think that by placing truckers in a position coming out of the port to have to pay 2 tolls going south is going to be an incentive for economic development in Virginia and will help us compete with other states? Or will the truck simply bypass the 460 bypass and its toll, the I-95 toll, and simply take 58 and run to Emporia and go south from there?
Well, you've asked about tolling of 95, which is a discussion that's ongoing now, and of course understand the concerns of Sussex Board of Supervisors and the people of the southern stretch of I-95. But as it relates to this project, I think that the trucking firms, it's about the balance of how quickly can they move their goods in and out of wherever they're going, and time is money, and so there's a value of we just opened the hot lanes as an example. You have a choice on the Beltway as of Saturday morning. You can ride for free, you can pay a toll. Now, I was on the Beltway yesterday. It took me about 45 minutes to go the 10 miles. I could have been in the hot lanes and been there in 10 minutes. So it's a matter of choices as to whether or not those trucking companies will pay those 2 tolls. And we think that they will.
And the reason I asked the question is, the port's own 2040 master plan that they produced in 2008 said that in the year, basically first it says that the traffic coming out of the port was not a significant impact on the infrastructure of the state of Virginia. It's in their report. It also says that in 2017 that the port estimates that trucks coming down 460 are 102 trucks a day, and which doesn't seem like a lot of trucks to spend $1 billion on. And the question is about the tolls. If truckers are going to take 58 and bypass these 2 tolls, and that 102 number even goes down further, and can VDOT really justify building a bypass in $1 billion if you're under 100 trucks coming down 460?
Yeah, I think we're confident in that this road will be used. It will continue to grow in its use. It will create opportunities for additional businesses. It's not simply the trucks that run the road today. And some of that information makes the assumption that it's just background growth. It's not the growth that is created when you provide this corridor that has excellent industrial and commercial and manufacturing access. So it's so what you're talking about are things that are sort of the background traffic. Again, I go back to the levels of truck and car volume are the folks that are going to invest in these bonds are comfortable with our numbers. And these are very cautious people. These are people that are very cautious when they buy these bonds.
But you understand, you understand that if you're wrong, you've destroyed our farms and our homes and our businesses for nothing. And that's another question: is can you explain what is the justification of how do you justify coming through a majority minority county like Sussex County, threatening the existing businesses and jobs that we have now? How do you convince us that that's healthy for the minority population that we have?
Well, I will tell you that the project has been one that we have believed at a statewide and a regional level is an important project for Virginia. It is important for the people that live in this part of Virginia. It will create opportunities that you do not have today in terms of drawing large manufacturing jobs, other jobs to this region. The project will draw jobs to this region. As far as your comment about is this the impact of a particular community, every time we build a road project, we impact people. We just cannot, there's no such thing as a project that doesn't impact people.
Right.
We are very careful and very conscious and work very diligently through that process to minimize, to mitigate, to do things where we can to adjust through that process.
But you understand our concern. We haven't seen any studies. I've been to 4 of your presentations, and we've seen no study from VDOT, who's moving forward with this project, showing the impact on the community, a 60% minority, county that you have. So,
well, I think that both from, and if you want the details from the staff on the environmental study about the economic studies that have been done independently, we have plenty of that for you, and they'd be glad to provide you that information.
One other thing, the gentleman from downtown Norfolk, could he explain to us how a bypass that starts west of Suffolk will relieve traffic in downtown Norfolk?
We're going to take just a few more questions because it's past 7, and we'll just take a few more, and then we're going to have to break it up, but we have more information for you. You've got some good information sources that you can reach out to after this, so we'll just take a few more. I believe I saw you long ago raising your hand. Okay.
Appreciate y'all doing this meeting. I'm a native Virginian, but I'm actually here by way of Atlanta, Georgia, and I manage presently 150,000 acres of timberland in between 460 and 58. And at the present conceptual map, we have about roughly 4,000 or 5,000 acres in the crosshairs, about 7 to 10 tracks with this corridor project. And as an absentee landowner, I know we're going to be targeted. I mean, we're easier to work with for VDOT, but going back to your compensation process, we have client mandates for this whole approved appraisal process. And that's mandates that comes down from the SEC as a registered investment advisor. Reading through your compensation process, you had mentioned appraisal, like I said, at y'all's discretion, at VDOT's discretion. What sort of, do you have any methodology there as far as coming up with an approved appraisal that we can both agree upon?
Yeah, and timber is a little bit different in terms of how it's valued, and I can't tell you the details of that, but our right-of-way folks can. I think there's a recognition that again, timbering and how that whole value process that you go through in the regulation regarding the timber is something that our right-of-way people have dealt with before. I can't give you a good answer because I just don't know, but I do think we have some right-of-way folks here that can assist with that.
There are specialty appraisers who deal with timber appraisals. And
there's some that we can't work with for various reasons, but
we have a list of approved appraisals that we have to use. I think we could work together. Yeah, I think so. And remember, the appraisal is the starting point. That's the offer. And then we negotiate.
Okay, sir, you've been standing up for a long time, so ask your question.
That's because I'm 78 years old. My back feels bad.
Oh, you don't have a question?
So, yeah, I have a question I haven't heard anyone mention. One thing, the gentleman from Norfolk, and I drive in Norfolk once in a while. If you go in tomorrow go into Terminal Boulevard at Hampton Boulevard at 3 o'clock and start to the Midtown Tunnel, and you'll see why we need this road. If you stay in your lane and don't jump around, you're probably in for about a 2-hour ride for that distance. And you'd be glad to pay somebody $10 just to get off the road almost at any time. But the other thing I haven't heard mentioned, Old Dominion did a traffic study. And they're talking about a toll on I-64, and I know that's just what if. But they estimate if the toll goes on 64 with the toll at the Hampton Roads Tunnel, truckers are going to move south. 2,500 to 3,000 trucks are going to move to 460. The estimates I saw is, those of us that drive 460, that in numbers, broken down by and the gentleman from the port can probably tell me, the port's not a 24-hour port. I mean, it operates 24 hours, but they accept truck traffic, what, about 10 hours a day? So if you break that down, you have a truck on 460 about every 15 seconds all day long. Can you imagine if you live on one of these side roads and you want to try to get out on 460, if you don't come out at a stoplight, you just well bring your lunch because you're going to be there a while. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take one more question. You asked first, and then we've got to wrap it up.
Yes, I'm Garland Chambers from Petersburg, but my interest is in Waverly on West Main Street. There's a church there, and supposedly there's had been a proposal made. My question is, how do you go about proposing a church building when a building may be worth $200,000 on the outside or $400,000, but the interest is in the inside? You take away the building, and the people that walk to church don't have an avenue there. So you're destructing the community. How are you going to converse? How can they be compensated for? How do you go about negotiating things of that nature?
And again, I can tell you that when we build projects in Virginia, we do occasionally we will impact a church, and in some cases we can work to avoid the church. In other cases, we are buying the church. Now, I believe it goes through a similar relocation process to a business in terms of it's not if we completely relocate somebody, whether it's a business or it's a home or it's an organization, part of the compensation is finding them replacement facility. Now, I get what you're saying. It's a community church. It's been there for a long, long time. How do you replace a community church? The answer is I'm not sure, except that the compensation does include not simply paying you the value of the church. We've got to find you a suitable replacement. But the specific church, I don't know. Without you could look at the displays and talk with the folks as we go through this process. I don't know if it's dead set in the middle of where the road needs to go or it's on the fringes.
Okay, and is there a certain length of time that you will have to relocate?
Yeah, what is a...
Because you have a house you can buy more readily than a church building. There's time that we do have to get these things done.
There would be time. I don't know what the time frame would be. I know in cases where we actually, the church bought another piece of property and built a new church and moved the congregation, and they wanted something close enough that their ministry could be with the people that attend that church.
We'll take one more question.
I'm directly in the path of 460. I have no problem with it. I congratulate you on the job you're doing. But I have a different type question I'd like to share with you. I've been involved in government public contracts for several decades. My question is, what is your definition of a fixed price contract? What are the potential pitfalls in it? And is the contract available to the public?
Okay, let me start with the end and work backwards. The comprehensive agreement, which is the contract, is it posted online?
Yes, all the contract documents are posted online.
Okay, so the contract itself, it hasn't signed yet, but this contract is not a negotiated. It was a low bid, a lowest public subsidy. So the contract document that gets signed is, except for anything related to the final bond terms, it will not change. So the contract is available. You can go on our website, go to 460, and you can actually see the contract. Now, you asked about firm fixed price contracts. We do contracting in a couple of ways. We do what was sort of a unit-based contract where we pay for the number of units you place in the ground, whether it's feet of pipe or tons of asphalt or yards of concrete, that kind of thing. This type of contract is, in fact, a fixed price. Now, if during the process we change things, we say, well, wait a minute, we said we wanted this interchange, but we want to add one. We want to add an interchange, and that costs money. The contractor will be compensated for that. But if the contractor runs into bad soil, bad winter, it takes more asphalt than they thought it would, that's on them. That's part of the risk that they accept when they deliver this facility. We have standards. They say, well, you have to build this much asphalt or concrete pavement. The lanes have to be this wide. You have to use this type of material. You have to design it to these standards. So we have protection to keep from getting an inferior product, and we will inspect it throughout. But on a fixed price contract, these design-build contracts, there's very little in terms of overruns, except when it's directed by us. Oh, yes. And regarding right-of-way, that was an area that there's basically an allowance for the right-of-way acquisition, and then there's some cost sharing beyond that. So there's a few specific items, and right-of-way is one, where we have said we think the right-of-way value will be this much, and that's the allowance. If it's less, there's some sharing, and if it's more, there's some sharing. And I'll ask Morteza
Actually, that right-of-way is a good example. The value that we have today in contract documents is $150 million. That is part of the contract documents that, as Charlie said, are already posted online. 10% above or below that, that's the risk and rewards that the design builder is going to have. So let's say that if the cost is $125 million, they will have to pay that additional $10 million out of their pocket. So that's a risk that they're taking. If that exceeds that 10% band, then VDOT will share some of that cost with them, but they will have the first 10% cost overrun for that contract. And just adding something to what Charlie said, we have standard design-build contracts in the state that we're using for other projects. The design-build contract that we're using for this project is basically based on that standard design-build contract that the state has, with some minor tweaks, because this project is a large project, is more complex than maybe some other projects that we have had before. So we have just made sure that contract has been tweaked a little bit to reflect the needs of this project. But the basis of that contract is a standard design-build contract that we're using for other projects.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap up our questions. For those of you who have some questions, feel free to come up here and we can answer them individually. We'll be up here for a few more minutes. If you've gotten a fact sheet, you will have some information on the website and also on a toll-free number. If you don't have a fact sheet, the information is right there. Go to the website because we have the comprehensive agreement on that. We will have the presentation given tonight. We have taken an audio recording and also a video recording of tonight's meeting. We will post that as well, too. If you have any information, you can email that email address, or you can also call the 1-855 number as well, too, and send your questions that way. We will answer them as quickly as we possibly can and keep you apprised of what is going on our website, we do have the ability where you can sign up for updates so that we can keep you posted on all the latest news on this project. So thanks so much for coming out. We really do appreciate it. We're trying to be as open as we can with everything. And again, we'll be up here for a few more minutes for those of you who still have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.